Today, on Friday, June 13, 2025, the long-simmering conflict between Israel and Iran has violently erupted into open warfare. What was once a covert battle fought through proxies and in the shadows has now become a direct and large-scale military confrontation. The escalation began in the pre-dawn hours when Israel launched a massive preemptive air offensive, codenamed Operation Days of Repentance. Dozens of Israeli fighter jets streaked across the sky, penetrating deep into Iranian territory to execute a series of coordinated strikes. This bold military action marks a significant and dangerous turning point in Middle Eastern geopolitics, moving the two regional powers from indirect skirmishes to a direct, declared state of conflict that threatens to engulf the entire region. The Israeli government has been clear about its objectives. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the world, stating that the operation's primary goal is to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. The targets were not random. They were carefully selected to dismantle Iran's most sensitive military and nuclear capabilities. Israeli warplanes struck strategic sites across several major cities, including the capital, Tehran, as well as Natanz, Kandab, and Khorramabad. This operation was not a limited, retaliatory strike, but a comprehensive campaign designed to cripple Iran's ability to project power and, according to Israel, to build a nuclear weapon. The Prime Minister's declaration that the offensive will continue for as many days as it takes signals a commitment to a prolonged and decisive engagement. This dramatic escalation did not happen in a vacuum. For months, diplomatic tensions had been rising to a boiling point. Just 2 weeks ago, talks between the United States and Iran aimed at de-escalating the nuclear standoff collapsed. Iran's supreme leader rejected an American proposal for the phased elimination of its uranium enrichment program. This diplomatic failure was followed by a damning report from the International Atomic Energy Agency, which found Iran non-compliant with its nuclear obligations for the first time in 2 decades. In response, Iran threatened to withdraw from the Non-Proliferation Treaty, a move that would effectively end international oversight of its nuclear activities and further alarm its adversaries. The immediate justification for the Israeli attack, as articulated by Prime Minister Netanyahu, was intelligence suggesting Iran had crossed a critical threshold. He claimed that Tehran had accumulated enough highly enriched uranium to produce 9 atomic bombs and had recently taken concrete steps toward weaponization. This assertion came just 1 day after the United Nations overwhelmingly called for a ceasefire, a vote that highlighted Israel's growing international isolation following its prolonged conflict in Gaza and its 2024 military campaign against Hezbollah. Despite the international calls for restraint, Israel chose to act unilaterally, believing the threat from Iran had become too imminent to ignore any longer. The impact of Israel's airstrikes was immediate and devastating, striking at the very heart of Iran's military and scientific leadership. Iranian state media quickly confirmed the deaths of several of the nation's most powerful figures. Among those killed was Hossein Salami, the formidable commander-in-chief of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, who was killed at the IRGC headquarters in Tehran. The strikes also claimed the lives of Mohammad Bagheri, the Chief of General Staff, and Major General Gholam Ali Rashid, another top IRGC commander. The attacks have effectively decapitated a significant portion of Iran's military command structure in a single, sweeping blow. Beyond the military leadership, Israel's offensive specifically targeted the intellectual core of Iran's nuclear program. 2 prominent scientists, Faridun Abbasi, a former chief of Iran's Atomic Energy Organization, and Dr. Mohammad Ali Taranchi, a key nuclear physicist, were confirmed among the dead. Their deaths represent a major setback for Iran's nuclear ambitions, as their expertise is difficult to replace. The strategic infrastructure hit was equally critical. The strikes damaged Iran's main uranium enrichment facility in Natanz and the heavy water reactor in Kandab, both central to its nuclear program. Furthermore, ballistic missile sites and command and control centers were destroyed, severely degrading Iran's offensive capabilities. Iran's response was swift and furious, demonstrating that despite the heavy losses, its capacity for retaliation remains intact. Shortly after the Israeli attacks, Iran launched a volley of missile attacks targeting locations across Israel. The skies over Israeli cities were lit up by air defense systems intercepting incoming threats, and the government declared a national state of emergency. Citizens were urged to stay near bomb shelters, bracing for what is expected to be a sustained campaign of missile and drone attacks from Iran and its regional proxies. This immediate counterattack ensures that the conflict will not be a one-sided affair, pulling both nations deeper into a perilous cycle of violence. The human cost extends beyond high-profile casualties. The strikes hit military compounds located in residential areas, inevitably causing civilian casualties, though exact numbers are not yet clear. In Tehran, areas near the Imam Khomeini International Airport were targeted, causing widespread panic and disruption. The conflict has abruptly shattered the sense of normalcy for millions of people in both countries. In Israel, families are huddled in shelters, while in Iran, citizens are grappling with the shock of a direct attack on their capital and the loss of their leaders. The fear and uncertainty of what comes next now dominate everyday life for ordinary people caught in the crossfire. The news of the attack sent immediate shockwaves through the international community, drawing a mixture of alarm, condemnation, and cautious support. The United States, under the Trump administration, quickly clarified that it was not involved in the Israeli operation. Washington issued a stark warning to Iran, cautioning it against retaliating on U.S. interests in the region. In a clear sign of heightened alert, the U.S. had already withdrawn some diplomats from Iraq and authorized the voluntary departure of military family members from the Middle East in the days leading up to the attack. The American embassy in Israel has now ordered all its personnel and their families to shelter in place, underscoring the perceived danger. Reactions from American political figures were sharply divided along party lines, reflecting the deep partisan split on foreign policy. Senator Lindsey Graham, a Republican hawk, tweeted his unequivocal support for Israel, stating, "Game on, pray for Israel." In stark contrast, Democratic Senator Chris Murphy suggested the timing was suspect, implying that the attack may have been intended to deliberately sabotage President Trump's diplomatic negotiations with Tehran. Meanwhile, other world powers reacted with grave concern. Britain issued a warning about new threats to commercial shipping in the vital waterways of the Middle East, while other nations called for an immediate cessation of hostilities to prevent a wider regional war. The economic fallout was instantaneous and severe, as global markets reacted with panic to the prospect of a major war in the oil-rich Middle East. Financial markets, which loathe uncertainty, saw a steep sell-off. S&P 500 futures plunged by 1.6%, and Dow futures tumbled over 600 points before markets even opened in New York. The price of crude oil, a critical barometer of geopolitical tension in the region, surged by 6% as traders anticipated disruptions to supply. This spike in energy costs will have a ripple effect, potentially driving up inflation and slowing economic growth worldwide. Asian markets also felt the impact, with Japan's Nikkei and South Korea's Kospi indexes both registering significant declines. For people around the world, the conflict's impact began to materialize almost immediately through disruptions to travel and daily life. Major international airlines swiftly rerouted or canceled flights that would normally pass through Iranian airspace, causing chaos for travelers and severing key air corridors between Europe and Asia. Iran closed several of its airports, including in Tehran, effectively isolating the country. The fear of escalating conflict has put the entire global shipping industry on high alert, particularly for vessels passing through the Strait of Hormuz, a critical choke point for a large portion of the world's oil supply. The conflict has instantly made the world feel smaller and more interconnected, as its consequences radiate far beyond the immediate battlefield. This direct confrontation between Israel and Iran is far more than just another regional dispute. It is a global event with profound implications for international peace and security. The conflict involves a declared nuclear power, Israel, and a nation, Iran, that stands on the threshold of developing its own nuclear weapons. A full-scale war between these two heavily armed states could lead to catastrophic destruction, with the potential use of devastating conventional and unconventional weapons. The fallout from such a war would not be contained within their borders, but would destabilize the entire Middle East, a region already fractured by numerous conflicts and rivalries. The conflict also threatens to disrupt the global economy in ways that will affect households everywhere. The Middle East is the world's most important energy-producing region, and the Strait of Hormuz is the planet's most critical oil transit choke point. Any sustained military action in the area could choke off a significant portion of the world's oil supply, causing energy prices to skyrocket. This would translate directly into higher costs for gasoline at the pump, increased heating bills, and more expensive goods and services for consumers worldwide. Businesses would face higher operational costs, potentially leading to job losses and economic recession on a global scale. Furthermore, this war has the potential to draw in other global powers, transforming a regional conflict into a much larger international crisis. Iran has been strengthening its alliances with Russia and China, while Israel remains the United States' closest ally in the region. An escalating war could force these major powers to take sides, creating a dangerous standoff reminiscent of the Cold War. The risk of miscalculation or an unintended clash between major world powers becomes terrifyingly real, with consequences that could reshape the global order. The conflict tests the very fabric of international diplomacy, and the institutions designed to prevent such wars from happening. Ultimately, this is a conflict that matters because it touches upon the shared security and prosperity of the entire world. It is a stark reminder of how interconnected our world has become, where a conflict thousands of miles away can impact your wallet, your travel plans, and your sense of safety. The humanitarian toll of a prolonged war would be immense, creating refugee crises and immense suffering that would ripple across continents. The principles of international law and the global commitment to nuclear non-proliferation are at stake. For all these reasons, the events unfolding today in the Middle East demand the world's attention, as their outcome will undoubtedly shape the future for all of us.